If you look at the Gallup poll provided percentage of registered Republicans who supports Israel's war in Gaza, it's actually completely unchanged from, I think, November 2023 until now. So the support is very steady. It's in the 70 to 75% range there. So for the most part, that support is holding steady. However, with that large caveat aside, you're completely right that there is absolutely the rise of this wing of provocateurs who range from being anti-Semitic to just being, frankly, just outright anti-Western. I mean, the way that I view someone like Tucker Carlson, I do think that he is absolutely anti-Semitic at this point. All you have to do is you listen to the way that he talks about how the New Testament doesn't need the Hebrew Bible. He's essentially made that argument there. The way he talks about how arguments offered by various Jews here in the U.S., such as Ben Shapiro, Mark Levin, are positively unchristian. He says a lot of things that really kind of give away the game there. But I look at folks like Tucker, and I really do think that he fundamentally actually has a deep abhorrence, not just of Jewish people, but really of Western civilization itself. I mean, this is a guy who had a very friendly puff piece interview with the so-called president of Iran, who was just the Ayatollah Khamenei's puppet essentially there. This is someone, Tucker Carlson, who was in Moscow, Russia a year and a half ago, who was doing propaganda-like videos from the Moscow subway station and the Moscow supermarket. I mean the kind of stuff that would have made Bernie Sanders from the 1980s during the Soviet era, frankly, blush. So you have a lot of folks here that have really kind of drank this anti-Western civilizational Kool-Aid. And the best way that I can possibly try to make sense of it, not that it's necessarily my role to try to make sense of anti-Semitism, but the best way that I can try to understand what's happening here is there's been a very real populist uprising in the United States over the past 10-ish years, really kind of since Donald Trump came down the escalator there. And part of this populist uprising has been a correct, I think it's a very correct point, a correct rebuke of American elites, of the American ruling class. Again, I've made that argument myself. I fundamentally share it. I think that American elites have really kind of steered this country dramatically off course for a very long time. The problem, though, and the logical leap that I think people like Tucker often make, is they then conflate the American ruling class, let's call it, with America itself. So that they then think that it's not merely the American ruling class that has made us bad, but rather it's actually America itself. So that's kind of how you end up with this paradoxical point where they're making the so-called quote-unquote America first case to embolden America's enemies, to embolden China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and so forth there. It really doesn't make any sense when you actually start to break it down there. But again, to end on a positive note, the polling for the American right of center is still generally holding up. So following President Trump's courageous and very limited intervention in the 12-day war between Israel and Iran back in June, where he sent in the B-2 bombers, roughly a 37-hour mission. The planes fly from Missouri to Iran and back. Not a single shot was fired. A tremendous act of courage and just a demonstration of unmitigated American military superiority. After that, there was a poll from CBS News, another major American pollster, that showed that 94% of self-proclaimed MAGA Republicans supported President Trump's limited strikes on Iran there. So this notion that Donald Trump's MAGA coalition is populated with full-on isolationists simply is not, it's not evinced by the actual polling data. That does lead to the logical question as to what exactly are Tucker Carlson and those folks trying to do there when it comes to trying to stake out a 6% market share position. I think that kind of gets into the realm of things like bot activity, Iranian, Qatari bots on social media, things like that. There's also just a very loud segment that is kind of taking these positions there. They're not numerous, but they're very loud there. Ultimately, though, I remain cautiously optimistic, at least when it comes to an American perspective. Although I would very candidly say that if I were talking to one of my fellow Jews who was living in London or Paris, I would say, you might want to strongly consider moving to Israel. That's my very candid stance about Jews there. But in the United States, things for now are still totally fine, especially in Florida where I live, where things are frankly just totally quite normal.